Well, good evening, everybody. Sdales, TDR, Trade to Black podcast. Obviously, not the news that our space investors and everybody involved in this industry were hoping for, but Amendment 3 in Florida is not going to pass. Therefore, adult use recreational sales will not pass. What does this mean for the industry? What's next? What should be prepared for? We're going to dive into some of those things here tonight and really go over a lot of the things. If you got any comments, any frustrations, we'll be reading them obviously here. Be more than welcome to obviously hear you out loud and clear. Obviously, I'm kind of short for words right now, disappointed to say the least, but we are TDR. We set the narrative and we got to address this and figure out what's next. So with that, Anthony Varell is going to be joining us in just a moment. Let's first welcome in Guap here on a Tuesday night. And I know this is it's disappointing to say the least. And it is what it is, right? And I don't want to sit here and like we want to obviously make sure that people get some information, some value out of this live stream here tonight as to what's next. But there are some interesting regions within that state that I couldn't believe, like Miami, voting no in favor of Amendment 3. Like there was some real eye openers as to what areas in Florida that actually voted against this, which surprised me to say the least.
Yeah, the invite said watch parties, so I'm here for the party part, and this is disappointing. I am disappointingly sober right now. So yes, 86.7% of the votes have been counted according to the Washington Post, which appears to be reporting the tally ahead of some of the other trackers I've seen on ABC, NBC.
Yep.
Where Marijuana Moments pulling in their numbers from. So what I'm seeing is 86.7% of votes have been counted. 55.6% are yes. That's 5 point. Whoop! It just jumped. 5.5 million votes.
What have you got right now for the amount of estimated votes that are in what percentage?
We're now at 87.9.
87.9, and it's
55.7% are yes. That's like 5.5 million votes total.
Yeah, we actually reached out to 87.9%, 5.564 million, 55.7%, and then another 4.432 million at 44.3% no.
Yeah.
Too bad this wasn't 55% to pass.
Right.
But we did reach out to some of our networks, and we didn't want to put this out on the Twitterverse around 5 o'clock, but there are some people that were very well connected that were actually showing 55%, and I didn't want to believe it. And I thought, well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's see how this all unfolds. I was surprised to see how quickly these votes came in, because once 7 o'clock hit and then 7:02, I clicked refresh, and then bam, we were off and running at like 15%. But I was feeling somewhat optimistic because I looked at some of the regions within the actual and counties within the actual state of Florida, and none of the votes registered around the universities and colleges was registered yet. So I thought 55, 56% would be all right. But I ended up logging on to the app with Washington Post, which seemed to be a little bit further ahead than NBC's and Marijuana Moments. But regardless of who the network was reporting, hats off to obviously Tom Angel. He's done everything he possibly can to like make sure people are informed and up to date. But, the reality is not the news that a lot of people in the cannabis space were hoping for. But
no, I mean, it's, my mind instantly goes to all the catalysts yet to come. But I do want to, keep this show focused on what's happening right now before we, just instantly look forward. There's going to be, I will say this, there's going to be a lot of vitriol on Twitter, probably in the comments.
Yeah.
Everywhere, a lot of finger pointing, a lot of I told you so's, a lot of trading advice, how to handle this tactically. I've always, since I've been on the show, always sort of taken more of a long-term approach. That's me.
Yeah.
That's my approach. Trading on coin flips is not my game. But at the same time, I did, based on the polling that and analysis that Hirsch did, based on how much money and the quality of the campaign that Kim truly ran. I mean, you can't say she could have done something differently or better, to be honest with you. The only surprise in all this was just how hard in the paint DeSantis and team went, spewing a lot of
Yeah, I know.
Truly crazy stuff to try to.
Want
I don't
people
know how
not to
much.
get we always try to emphasize in this. Let's not get emotional, obviously, in this.
Right.
Mohammed, I hear you. You're bummed out, hot right now, total shock. This is
Yeah.
premature. Tiger overrates life. Business goes on. There's one other big thing that's going on right now. It's a federal election. So let's see, obviously, how that plays out with Donald Trump. This was kind of our federal election, let's face it, with the cannabis space.
Right.
But, at the end of the day, we've got Kamala Harris, Donald Trump still at play. When we look at SVP of the United States Cannabis Council, David Culver, on the other day, he said, really doesn't matter what administration's at play. As we've always said all along, this obviously would have been huge to get Amendment 3 passed. But a lot of you commenting here, the focal point that we need to focus on, this is what we touched on last week with Rob Seacrest, is rescheduling. And he did sound optimistic that something is going to happen. So let's see how this election plays out, who is appointed, obviously, president, and then see what happens with the overall industry from there. But, let's face it, these stocks are going to get, hit probably tomorrow morning. At what capacity? We'll find out. But,
Yeah, I mean, at the risk of repeating myself, we just had, we were saying it's not an election issue, not a big issue. We just had Kamala tweet out she wants to legalize cannabis recreationally, nationally. Obviously, we've analyzed and talked with Culver and others. That was a great interview, by the way. Pretty balanced, I would say. And he, he was just saying, yeah, obviously that's a administrative action or a legislative action. That's not a promise she can just write an executive order for. But he wasn't that concerned under a Trump or Harris presidency that the Schedule 3 process wouldn't be seen through. We have both candidates coming out in support of that. And depending on how it all shakes out tonight and in the weeks to come, when we find things out, there is a scenario where you've got Harris presidency, Steve Daines as speaker, or a majority leader in the Senate, and a blue house. And that's the ideal Goldilocks scenario, if you will, for something like safe banking or maybe a deschedule vote later. So we can just hope that happens. But yeah, obviously this Florida thing is a bummer today.
Well, bring on our first guest. We're going to have a number of people on, but from Florida, an investor in the space, and who needs no introduction. Let's welcome Wolf of Wall Street, Jason Spatafora, and not the news that we wanted. And look, I thought we're going to get 61, 62%. Like I said earlier, we did get some news earlier that it looked at 55. I didn't want to believe it, but it looks like it's going to end up around that 55% mark. But man, were you not surprised when you look at the county of like Miami like that? That's what really grabbed my attention pertaining to this. Like it just,
yeah.
And then Polk, which seems to be the complete opposite side, actually voted in favor for it. So some surprises in certain counties across the state.
Yeah, it was surprising to see that the ones where you had the majority, the first thing where I'm like, oh crap, was you weren't getting 60%, you were getting 54, 55.
That was a trend.
And then when Miami-Dade started to report, that was the one where I was, I was looking for the numbers to bump up, and it was like 53 against. I was like shocked.
Yeah.
Because look, once Trump endorsed this, my feeling was like pretty much everybody else that people were just going to get in line, right? And and Anthony put out a tweet today how it's a question of like, are you with DeSantis on this or Trump on this?
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think anybody thought that people would break with Trump, and clearly they did. So yeah, look, it sucks, right?
Yeah, it does.
And you're going to get another crack at it, right? It's, whether it's the midterm or the next election, but there is silver lining to this. With some of the bigger companies in the space. Especially Trulieve. At the end of the day, Kim put forth Kim, yeah, I mean, she doesn't have balls, but she put her nuts out there,
Yeah.
spent the money.
Yeah. 140 million.
To do this, right? She was ponying up.
Yeah.
When, you know, like, and I'm sure other people contributed, but like, you have to understand, Florida is a giant pharma state, right? And that's who you're fighting against.
Yeah.
And, you know, look, she went toe to toe.
I didn't realize at what capacity, but it's a learning lesson, right?
Yeah. I mean, you know, like, look, the previous governor, before he was governor, was in, like, you know, Rick Scott, now he's a senator, was huge in the pharma industry. So, you know, look, I think Trulieve emerges. Look, it's going to be harder work for her, but she's just made it that much harder for so many companies in Florida. And, you know, look, and I think you will see a consolidation.
So what's next then, based off of that, you think? You know, when you look at the Florida landscape, I don't want to get premature, but, you know, this is a big announcement, right? And people start to think, okay, some of these, you know, debt restructuring that were pushed out into 26, like 2026, 2027. I don't know if this gets retabled in 2 or 4 years, but if it is 4, then that's like you said, there's going to be a lot of consolidation. Do you think that happens within the state?
100%. I mean, a lot of these companies were already zeros and investors didn't realize it. And, you know, REC would have given them breathing room to figure things out. They don't have that room. And S3, who knows how long that's going to take.
Yeah, I hear you.
So I think, you know, look, there's some companies that are going to obviously do better than others. Look, Green Thumb's in the state heavy, right? But he's got an entirely giant business outside of the state.
Yeah.
You know, and Trulieve's moat just gets that much bigger, but it sucks, right?
One of our viewers actually writes, if Harris wins, stocks may not take a hit. Do you agree with that? Marcus Smith, thanks.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, and this isn't me trying to be political or anything or saying like I like Harris over Trump, but I think a big reason for this loss is because of the Democrats, right? Mm-hmm. Because the Democrats were just clearly not energized to come out and vote because they got, you know, we put forth a candidate that was
you make a good point, because Joe Rogan with Donald Trump that was on 2 weeks ago, and they're like, look at certain pollings, and if there's a big lead, it basically negates the opposing party to go out and vote, and you may have something there, right?
Yeah, and it's like, you know, some of my friends that are Democrats, you know, that don't like Trump, they're just like, why would I would never in a million years vote for Harris. Yeah. You know, and they're like sad that they have to, you know, they felt like they were compelled to do it. And you had a lot of that, you know, and on top of it, the last cycle, Trump told people to just come out and vote, not do mail-in. Like they crushed mail-in this time. That, you know, so
I'm hearing too the margin of victory in Florida is actually going to be the largest they've seen in 40 years between a Republican and Democrat. Listen, I want to bring some people up. I want to bring you back on in just a few minutes because I want to finish off on a couple of things as to what we can expect for tomorrow. But we're going to log you off. We'll bring you back on. But I first want to bring up Jesse Channon from the Cannabis. But Jesse, good to see you here on a Wednesday night. If Orange, you can bring him up. Good to see you. Obviously, we wish this was on better terms, but it is what it is. But you know what? We are a news platform. We got to get in front of this, and you know, can't shy away with all reaction. And what do you think? Like, obviously, it's not the news that we wanted, right?
No, look, I mean, I think I think we're disappointed, right? As an industry, I think it's tough. I do think that, you know, I caught the end of, you know, what Jason was saying about a silver lining, right? I think that the thing that we can't shy away from is that there was almost 1 million people more that voted yes than no on this, right? It needed 6% to pass. Okay. So we didn't get there.
Yeah.
I will say, first of all, I mean, hats off to Kim, to Boris, to George, to so many of the operators who put in so much money, so much effort into trying to get something through that I actually think was incredibly important for product safety, for accessibility for people. I think it's a shame what's happened the last couple of weeks with some of the advertisements and campaigns that I've seen, and how
we said earlier that the polling hadn't changed all that much, but when I look back at it now, after the results that are in, there had to have been an impact, don't you think?
I think so. I think the polling had changed quite a bit over the last 10 to 14 days. And so I think that, there's going to be a lot of comments about the $50 million that DeSantis used to advertise against it, and whether it was taxpayer money. I mean, there's going to be all sorts of noise. The reality is it didn't pass this go round. That's probably not going to be the case moving forward. I think that there's more that we can do as an industry to continue to educate, to continue to show the successes that other states and other programs are having when they pass, good adult use and recreational programs that provide access and safe product into the marketplace.
Yeah.
I think what's even more interesting, though, right now is the presidential, right? I mean, we obviously know where Yes on 3 landed, right? So no way to sort of fancy.
This is our Super Bowl. This is our universe, right? But outside of this is just there's a lot of people that don't understand what's going on here in Florida. But
yeah,
I think if anything, and I'm trying to stay positive here, but in the media space, if they're talking about you and they love you, great. If they hate you, it's great. If they're not talking about you, then that's a bad thing. And you can definitely tell, obviously, here in Florida that, look, the one thing I'm going to sit here and say, what does this have an effect on other red states based on this outcome? That's going to probably have somewhat of an impact. But the topic of conversation is front and center. And it's on to obviously rescheduling, which is going to take place. And we have said that a couple of times over the last couple of weeks, because we're putting maybe our eggs in one basket just with Amendment 3. But, rescheduling obviously is a big one, but I'd like to think that because this conversation it's kind of put cannabis kind of on the main stage during an election season, which 4 years from now and say, yeah, it sucked that we didn't get Amendment 3, but it was a turning point for the industry.
I think you're right. I think you have two candidates right now that both have very clear sort of perspectives on cannabis moving forward, which is way more than I think we've seen or we could say in the past, right? So you have the Harris platform, which is comprehensive reform, right? And then you have the Trump platform, which is safer banking, Schedule 3, and really leaning into sort of state autonomy at the program level.
Yeah.
So look, I think that you're going to hear a lot of interesting conversations moving forward about which one of those is actually more valuable for the industry. And I think you could make a case in either direction, right? And I think that you have to split that out a bit as a consumer versus an operator, right? So if you're looking at this strictly from an operator point of view, and you say, is one of those better than the other? You might actually lean one way, right?
Yeah.
I won't point in a direction, but I can tell you that our industry right now has shown that it can thrive in a state regulated program level, where we have the ability to drive scale and build strong businesses and strong sort of market presence. And you remove, you reschedule it, you remove 280E, and this still feels like a pretty fundamentally different industry moving forward.
Can't emphasize on that enough. Cannot emphasize on that enough.
I think Jesse's dead on here. If you had told me a year ago, one, that Kamala Harris would be a candidate that's running for president, but two, that she said she would legalize federally recreational cannabis, and then also told me that Trump was going to support Schedule 3, safe banking, Amendment 3. I mean, basically a laundry list that it's almost like I drafted his tweet. It's a wish list. You could have gotten really, really good odds on that bet. It's hard to believe. So yeah, we're very caught up on who will be better for cannabis. We're very caught up on this result today.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is good, especially at this kind of moment, to take stock and realize we're front and center in terms of this conversation between these two candidates right now, and we're about to. And I just to tag onto this, I mean, sort of what happened here. If you look at right now, we're at 90% votes reported in Florida. Thank goodness Florida has a has a pretty efficient election system. 5.7 million for Trump, so, and 4.4 million for Harris right now. So that's 56% of the vote for Trump.
Well,
you know,
Jason Spatafora was saying this earlier.
He showed up.
Yeah, he made a good point on the Joe Rogan podcast. Trump did, where you look at some of these, states where someone's in a big lead. It just prevents, other parties that are voting for the other party that's losing by a wide gap to like really not go out and vote. Do you think that might have been the case here in Florida?
Oh man, there's there's so many of these sort of like political nuanced examples. That
Give us the answer, Jesse.
Jesse has to be more careful than me.
Yeah.
I actually don't know if that was the case here.
Yeah, I hear you.
I think it's fair. And the numbers in Florida, by the way, support that argument that Trump was always going to carry the state, had a lead in the state. Most polling showed that to the state. And then now here we are. He won the state, right? But what's really interesting and what's really confusing to me about what I'm seeing in these numbers right now is that Donald Trump supported yes on 3. And this sort of smear campaign against Amendment 3 that's taken place over the last couple of weeks, I really do think it mattered. And I do think it made a difference. And I think it's a shame because there was a lot of misinformation that was spread in that. And this whole concept of, yes on 3 passes, and all of a sudden, like, your kids are going to be at a playground and there's going to be a guy smoking a blunt next to the slide. And it's like, that's not exactly how this was going to work, right? Like that. So I do think that this is an opportunity for us as an industry to understand a state like Florida just had 1 million more people roughly say that they wanted it than they didn't. Okay. That's a great sign of next time around, we make a couple of adjustments, a couple tweaks to messaging. We lean in more to the education of what is really being proposed. I hope, I really sincerely pray that we do not have a bunch of examples in Florida like we're seeing in other states like New York, where illicit and gray market product that is not tested is causing issues, health issues and deaths. And so I hope that we don't see that. Like, this is not an I told you so moment that I think any of us want to deal with. My hope is over the next couple of years, we just see ongoing education, ongoing use cases from other states where you see that, a governor that signs on for hemp that is sold in gas stations and is not fully tested and is clearly marketed at the youth.
I know.
On some of the packaging, and this guy will come out and say that he's against recreational marijuana, but just go to your local gas station and buy this potentially incredibly dangerous product that is made from synthetic weed or hemp or whatever it is that product's formulated from. That's brutal. So I do think that there is, and
when you're taking money out of a budget to prevent for opioids.
I hope he gets torched.
And I know a lot of people on Twitter were basically caught. Like, there were some of these panels where guys were saying, they're associating cannabis with opioids and fentanyl. And in a minute, we're going to actually bring up Dr. Barry Gordon, who's been in the medical field for 30 plus years. And out of his career, he's never seen one medical emergency related to cannabis. And you and I both know, and I've been to Washington, there is a bigger problem than just what happened here in Florida. It's a major disconnect of final decisions within government and how they're completely disconnected, obviously, with the everyday American people. And,
look, you've got plenty of other people to talk to.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. And, let's keep in touch. I know you keep saying in the past 26 years for Shine, you probably have a good point here. So anyway,
Shadd, last thing before I go, to everybody listening, you just had two major party candidates who have both mentioned cannabis in their platforms. You had a Hail Mary tweet from arguably somebody playing from behind, which is the Harris campaign, trying to say that she will legalize cannabis as if that in her mind, and we know it's incredibly calculated politics, was going to move the needle and push moderate and independent voters to her direction. You just had over almost 1 million people more in a state like Florida say that they wanted it versus not. There is still plenty to be positive about in the industry. It's not a fun night for the state of Florida, but at the end of the day, like I've said before, the future on this is inevitable. It's just a matter of timing and what that time horizon is. So we just keep chugging away.
Appreciate the feedback at the time. Okay.
You got it, guys.
All right. Thanks, Jesse. With that, let's bring in Dr. Barry Gordon, and he runs a clinic out of Venice, Florida. Dr. Barry Gordon, sorry, Arns. Good to see you, sir. How are you? Can you hear me?
Listen, I'm like everybody tonight. Yeah. Do we have a good connection? My internet went out a few moments ago. I had to get out of the room and get back in. Are we okay connection? I can get on my phone.
Good. We're good. I think to our viewers, I just wanted to have you on because I know you took part in his Twitter Spaces on Sunday night. You had some pretty good stats to show that out of your medical career that you've never seen anybody actually, enter into medical emergency with an overdose of cannabis. But, we can get into all that stuff. It is what it is, what we saw right now. But when you saw a lot of these ads, when you talk to everyday people, how much do you see, based in your field that you're in, that people are educated on this industry as a whole?
No, first off, it's an honor to join you guys tonight.
Appreciate
and, Anthony, I've been watching you and your comments and, really, Shannon, listen, you guys have been doing a great job. And if I could just start with one thing, I'm proud to have been a member of Smart and Safe Florida and to speak out very vocally and pretty broadly. If you're in Florida, you probably know that. I didn't know I'd be on the Monday Night Football game, albeit on a commercial, but it was pretty heady. But I want to say a couple things. Kim Rivers was a great captain of Smart and Safe, and I do believe that. She really put out her best effort, went around the state, did her press tour that I thought she did a great job on, explaining the safe packaging that is really important. We never wanted the pediatric side to come into this discussion. It's an adult use bill. I posted today, Shannon, how I got involved early with this. I wrote an op-ed for Smart and Safe. I was happy to do so. It got a little bit of play in the Sarasota Herald Tribune and all that. But I was reached out by Smart and Safe to answer to the ER, quote, physician that they brought in from California who did a fear-mongering, quite frankly, and misinformation spot. That doctor actually comes out of the addiction space as well, if you look her up. Point is, yes, there are pediatric cases in the ER these days, and there's adults that come in too from, unregulated hemp products, doctors that don't teach their patients about using their medical products appropriately too. Kids do find gummies. The reason I say that I never saw a case in my ER years from cannabis is, and I don't like to make jokes about children, but I will make jokes about dogs. No child ever smoked a joint, right? And no dog ever smoked a joint either. And that's why I never personally saw a case of, cannabinoid overdose in the ER, because in the old days, if you smoked a half a joint with your friends and you didn't enjoy it at any age, but never a child, then you didn't get to the ER. You just didn't do it again. But now, yes, you can walk into the gas station, God forbid, the hemp shop, the CBD store, and come out with some products if you don't have the right education about it. That's what I worry about, quite frankly, in any legal adult use market, is the uneducated consumer coming in. So we're always going to need public education. That's why I was happy to stand with Kim and Joe Gruters, and many sheriffs and many others for public safety, public education, appropriate labeling, the proper testing. And we're going to need that irregardless of what happened tonight. And listen to me, the work just continues, quite frankly. And I'm happy to do that along with, and let me say one more thing about True Leaf.
Yep.
They may take what they get to the extent of press this, that, whatever. They have been the leaders in the educational space in Florida from the get-go, and I mean it. And there have been other MMTCs that have, stepped up as well to a certain extent, but nobody like Trulieve. And I was at the opening of the first Trulieve in Tampa, so many years ago. And I do absolutely speak to that as one of the reasons that I was happy to stand up, in support of the campaign. And I'll do so again.
Yeah. Well, listen, always appreciate your support. I'm sure, how concerned are you with the outcome of tonight's results? It really doesn't affect the medical field, but how are you concerned with what this will continue to do with the black market and some of that?
Listen to me. No, it affects the medical field. It affects the medical field significantly. We're going to fight to maintain, if not enhance medical. We need protection in the workplace first and foremost. We need veterans access, right? A home grow for medical patients, right? I make a lot of jokes. I'm 68. If they throw me into the assisted living zone in a city, okay, if I can hobble my butt out to the garden, and I've never, smoked a cigarette in my life. So it's those type of social reforms, that are going to continue to be worked on in Florida by myself and, quite frankly, by many others. That's why I got involved to the extent that I did. Didn't take a dime, believe it or not. And I'm glad to have the forum to speak to that.
Yeah,
I've been accused of various things. I've been accused of being paid to be a spokesman for Smart and Safe. Never. But I do want to be at the table. I want to be at the table legislatively. I want to be at the table with the MMTCs, to fight, to enhance medical. This will come back. I'll be there to speak the same public health and safety message that I've always spoken. It's all about education. It always will be about education.
Well, honestly, I appreciate obviously the education that you just provided me and our audience actually right now and the significance it'll have on the medical field. Listen, there's a bunch of guests that we have to have on here tonight, but what I'd like to do is follow up with you afterwards to get you on for a more longer term interview to talk more in depth about this because I find this interesting. But listen, I know get you back to the election and see how those results are going. And I appreciate you taking the 5 to 7 minutes with us, a little bit of education. And the next steps after this over the next week or two after earnings seasons is done, I think we want to address some of the things as what's next. And I think it's important for people to really understand the roadmap and what's at stake. One of those is obviously the medical side that you can focus on and the history behind it all, and then just trying to push the narrative forward in the overall state itself. But Dr. Gordon, I appreciate the time. Okay.
It'd be an honor. Listen, it'd be an honor to come back. That's why cannabis is so important because it works. And it was medicine long before Percocet and gabapentin and all that other stuff. It's a plant. We have the endocannabinoid system that matches it. So I'll always be here to keep the conversation going on the educational side. Thanks so much for tonight.
It's amazing. Appreciate it. And appreciate the support too. Okay. That was great. And Arns will bring those windows back in. There's a great comment here I saw to it. Yeah, there's some interesting stuff as to how much it's going to impact the medical side, but this is pretty much bang on. The funny thing is 57% of Florida vote yes, but DeSantis spent their tax money to crush this. Anyone see the irony there? The majority literally paid for their own destruction, and DeSantis is laughing.
Yeah, it is. For me, the disappointment is sort of multifold here. Yes, it's not, stocks in the industry and all that, but the plant needed a real victory, and I think that's where Dr. Berry's coming from. I mean, this is medicine. It helps people. I can't summarize all of this and wrap all of this up, but the plant needed a win. And this example feels particularly gross to me just because you've got a lot of unregulated stuff that's already out there. This isn't a matter of medical cannabis and now we're going rec. I mean, rec is already out there and it's not
the right rec.
Regulated kind that Dr. Berry would like to see out there. And so it just feels like this is a loss for the public health of the people of Florida. And to me, that, you know, coming from the sort of like wanting to see accessibility across the world standpoint, that's really why I'm bummed out today.
Yeah.
It's not because I was overexposed to Florida stocks. It's the fact that prohibitionist propaganda won, and we all know at home, and the people watching know at home, that, you know, just how truly wonderful this is when it rolls out to a state. And I really would have liked the state of Florida to experience that.
Yeah, I hear you.
Sooner rather than later.
Well, one of the things we talked about earlier with Jason Spatafora was consolidation in the state and what to expect next. I do want to bring in actually the CEO of New Lake Capital and a friend of the podcast, Anthony Cogniglio, at this time. Good to see you. I obviously hope this is on better terms, but it is what it is, right?
It certainly is. It's the reality that we live in. First off, thanks for having me. Good to see you guys. We're all have eyes going at different things here tonight. It is the world that we live in. And listen, it's a blow, but this industry is strong. This industry is resilient. This industry will be able to overcome. And I heard some of your previous guests talking about that positive tone. I think there'll be very much a pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and move forward. There's other meaningful points of data tonight as well. I mean, let's all look to Nebraska to get a new program up and running and get some medicine for patients in Nebraska. I haven't seen anything come out yet from there. And then obviously we know North and South Dakota are on the ballot later tonight. We also have Kentucky is looking at opt-ins. We talked about this the other night. There's many cities and counties there. So there's still a lot yet to happen for the industry tonight. What
are we seeing? If somebody can make some comments, but how are we trending right now? They're a little bit further west, but there's any votes in right now for North and South Dakota where that sits?
Not that I've seen. No. No, we're not even at 9 o'clock yet. No.
True. Good point.
Yeah.
Well, Jason Spatafora was saying earlier, like, what's next? Like, how much, you know, I don't want to like give the whole scare tactic, but how much change do you think this has for the Florida market? Is there a lot of change, or do you think, look, this is very emotional right now and people could be overreacting? Like, what's your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, I'm not going to say anybody's particularly overreacting, because that would require understanding of their situation. And so I think the reality of where we are is that the industry, while the industry was doing a little bit of preparation, what we didn't see was a tremendous amount of build out ahead of this. We didn't see people putting themselves in a position where this didn't happen, and it was going to create a massive, massive issue for the industry at large. I think you've seen continued dispensary openings. You've seen actually a bit of a step back, as we know, in the patient count recently, which is typical as you get a run up to one of these. But you see companies on the ground serving their customers, serving their patients every day. And you know what they're going to do? I believe those companies are going to wake up tomorrow and they're going to serve those people and they're going to serve those customers. And they're going to be good stewards in the communities that they operate in. And they're going to say, wow, you know what? At the end of the day, 57, 58, wherever we end up, that's still a significant support for the industry. And there are other paths to get there. There will be more referendums in the future, an opportunity to do that. There'll be legislative opportunities, I do believe, because one thing this is showing the politicians in Florida is that the majority of Floridians do support this type of reform. Maybe we just can't get it done through the ballot initiative process right now.
Yeah, I know on the Spaces on Sunday night, we talked about Congress and the appointments that are going to take place. And as much as we focus on our Super Bowl, as I said, and the focal point was Amendment 3, but there is a federal election going on. There's about to be a president to be announced. I don't know if it'll happen tonight. If it does, it's going to be late, but we'll be watching that closely. Are we seeing anything early on as to how things are trending right now amongst the two candidates? Have you guys seen anything?
The battleground states, I mean, Florida had a lot of people move in there for various reasons. So we were expecting that to go red. But, you know, the battlegrounds are my state of North Carolina. I'm rocking the hat. Georgia, Nevada, Arizona, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and, of course, Pennsylvania. You know, the Amish could decide this whole thing, according to some tweets. Right.
Yeah.
And talk about some good, you know, I've met and hung out with some Amish people. I mean, they are amazing folks that have a lot of skills, including agriculture. So anyway, there's some tie into cannabis there with the Amish, I'm sure. But
all right. So
yeah, it's a lot of states yet to be decided. This just in, Kamala has been chosen in Vermont. It's like very early.
Mohammed writes, is the Republicans win the Senate, do you think Schumer will push for safe banking by the end of the year? That was actually a topic of conversation we talked about 48 hours ago, Anthony. But yeah, that's some of the appointments that we're really going to see. And like I said, if the Republicans control the Senate, is this something? And there's some real conversation and momentum building towards safe during lame duck. And I don't want to deflect as to what happened here tonight and focus on the next thing, but we do. We got finalization. We know where we sit. It's now onwards to a new roadmap to figure out what we have to focus on next. We can't continue to strive enough, obviously, on rescheduling, but putting things into perspective, we've got two candidates. We had the senior vice president of the United States Cannabis Council on the other day, and he's saying it really doesn't matter who wins the presidency. Both are very open to actual change in the cannabis space, which is promising to say the least. But it'll be interesting to see what happens here with regards to Congress, the Senate, the House, and who's going to be appointed where, because once we have a kind of a concrete idea as to who's in what place, that's when we can get a realistic chance, or at least real dialogue and real ideas to whether or not safe banking during lame duck is a realistic thing, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, what tonight shows us is we still have a lot of work to do. And what's amazing is when you end up thinking about 57, 58% versus 60.1%, it's a couple of 100,000 votes that is putting an entire industry into a different mood, right? It's that close. We have a lot of work to do. I think, though, the momentum in terms of the support at the grassroots level, the support is there. The American people want this. And we know that, if not by tonight's vote, we know that because both candidates have embraced it, as you pointed out. So now what we need to do as an industry, I think, is we need to be organized in going at the politicians and making the politicians know that they can be on the right side of the vote by supporting this. Now, even though this,
do you think you see that? Do you think you see more of that after what's happened here tonight? Because we've talked about it, and there needs to be more presence in Washington and speaking to your local representatives. But when you miss out on something like this by only a couple 100,000, but the effect it could have on the industry as a whole, like, what do you think we've learned? And do you think that some of these executives will start to be more aggressive when it comes to, not to sit here and say they haven't already, but let's face it, the industry as a whole needs to have more presence, more understanding to a lot of politicians so they know exactly what's going on today?
Yeah, no, I think absolutely. I think people have to be engaged in that process because, as you saw when you were down there, as I see when I've gone down there, and because we own properties across the country, we're able to talk to different members of Congress and different senators that represent the districts where we own properties. And so we've used that for the outreach. So we've seen it, I'm sure you've seen it as well, where in many cases, there's just a lack of awareness. It's not high on the radar screen because nobody's talking to them about it. So the more the constituents get out there and engage with their representatives at the federal level, and sometimes even at the state level, the more they can bring them into the fold and create the education around the jobs, the medical benefits, and all the positives that we know about this industry, the better we can elevate that profile, and the better chance we're going to have for lasting reform, because it's really, really clear the way we need lasting reform is going to be at the federal level and is going to be through congressional action. And we could continue on fighting these. Now I'm going to sound a little Pollyannish, I know, but we could continue on fighting these state by state battles, or we could take the fight to Washington and we can try to change the rules at the federal level and maybe get states sacked, and then we're back to fighting at the states. But maybe we could get reform at the federal level that can allow us to have a bit more freedom in what we do at the state level. So that's my optimistic view, but more engagement is definitely needed from this industry.
Well, next steps. Once we have an idea, as I said earlier, we're going to actually have Don Murphy back on tomorrow at 4:00. So if you get a chance, make sure to log on, Anthony, and along with everybody else. We'll find out. But were there some things that could have been done differently regarding, yes on 3? Is there things that
I'm not going to armchair quarterback anybody in this thing? It seemed like I saw a tweet earlier today about leaving it all on the field. I'm not close enough to be able to judge anybody in this, but from my distant seat, it seemed like people were doing everything they could have to try to get it across the finish line. I mean, you had pretty popular governor running unbelievably hard against this. I actually, if DeSantis didn't push so hard, I think this would have passed.
I've seen some of the comments here and say, wow, you just spent $140 million that got burned out. And I'm like, no, like if anything, you go for something. Yes, they were the biggest ones to like benefit from this, Trulieve. They took the biggest risk. And we sit here and complain with so many things about how they don't work out. Well, guess what? She gave every single damn effort possibly to advance this industry forward. If it meant Trulieve would benefit, then so what? Pull everybody along.
Yeah,
this
anybody that's going to, I'm going to take a hard line here. Anybody that's going to criticize those that get in the arena and try and put their best foot forward, just to me, unless they're in that arena too, I think they have no place to criticize.
Exactly. All right, sir. Listen, appreciate your time. I'll get to get back to the television and see how it's going between Harris and Trump. But make sure
to keep an eye on Nebraska. We still have more on the ballot tonight.
Keep that hair nice and dark too. I don't know how you do it in cannabis. Mine was brown when I started, and she's a little gray now.
It's what I have. I'm losing it.
Good
have a good night, fellas.
All right, thanks. All right, that wraps things up. I'm going to go back to television to see what happens to this election and see who wins, because now that we've got this kind of out of the way, I was having a hard time accepting this.
I have a question for Wolf while he was.
Oh shit! Sorry.
It's okay. No, I was going to ask about Sammy's analysis about how, really, in terms of the percentage of market cap of these companies and all these guys that, this group of guys evidently that are trading these stocks. I mean, it's a really small percentage of the overall market cap. So, but the algos kind of, I think, to combine their two theories, I saw them going back and forth on X about it. To combine their two theories, it's the sort of algo amplifies the direction a little bit. But anyway, that's we're getting off into speculative day-to-day trader land.
Gretchen, you're right. It's par for the course in cannabis. That is the reality, right?
It's really about Florida and Schedule 3 and the election right now, so we can't get too deep into that hole.
I love how we're progressing, because I got to admit, there's some people on here tonight that I haven't heard from in 6, 9, maybe months, maybe even a year. They're all haters, and I love it. So all you haters out there, I'm glad you're logging on, because you know what? You feed our viewership, you feed our comments, and that's, whether you love us or hate us, I don't care, as long as we've got an audience. And, if you're going to be here on the darkest days, make sure you're here on the brightest days too, right? So onwards and upwards.
In the long run, the plant wins. I mean, I've said it before, but cannabis consumption is up year over year for 4,000 plus years. That's the trend line I'm watching. Everything else is noise.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of comments here tonight too. Going to dump the MSOs for a while and play the Canadian and German players. Is my 2 cents.
Yeah, a lot of cocksure takes about trading, and Tony Mac, what's definitely going to happen, and
Tony Mac,
a lot of finger pointing and tap dancing on graves, and I told you so's, and the events like this tend to reveal people's true nature. So,
Tony Mac writes, "Always sell into strength." Indeed. Look, we're 100,000 votes away. We can talk about selling into strengths. However, if this passed, but then people could say, look, I sold because I didn't think it was going to pass. So
selling to who? I mean, I'm going to say Wolf is right about one thing, which is custody matters. So whatever combination of Schedule 3, safe banking, when that leads to banks getting more comfortable custodying the stock, that leads to institutional investment. And so then all this talk about, one yikes headline bringing things down 20% or going up 20%, that tends to smooth out a lot once you get real money involved. And that doesn't take full legalization to happen. That doesn't take, it just takes the compliance departments at some of these institutions and some of these banks to get more comfortable custodying again, and then you start to see, it's been a while since they've been able to participate in this space. And since then, you've seen a lot of these companies, despite 280E, how many of these MSOs are free cash flow positive now? So I think when you see the institutions kind of come back into the space, you're going to see them come in at a higher percentage. And, Florida would have been big for the Florida players, right? But in terms of the overall story here and the investability of these stocks and the possibility of institutions come in, I'm still pretty bullish about that. Long run.
Well said.
I'm not talking about day trading here.
Lots to unfold tomorrow morning. We're going to have the baked in newsletter. I'll bring that up right now. Bam!
That's a big
Scan the QR code today. Actually, we'll have a lot of great information.
Biggest QR code I've ever seen. Very
we'll
good.
have some great takeaways from, what happened and what's next. So if you haven't done so already, make sure to scan that QR code as I just brought up. Actually, the link is going to be in the caption here in the YouTube channel. And like I said, we very much appreciate it if you want to get the latest information on what we can expect next, because there's a lot of stuff you got to keep informed, stay connected on what's going to happen now that we definitely know Amendment 3 is not going to pass. But with the next focus now is and see whether or not we can actually gain some real momentum when it comes to safe banking during lame duck session. Guap, I'm heading back to the TV to see how this update's going with Harris and Trump, but we'll see you back here, if not tomorrow, on Friday. Okay.
Yeah, I think everyone, I think this, if it's a landslide, we'll know tonight. Let's take a look at the results right now. I mean, it's still so early.
Yeah. This going into the wee hours of the morning.
Yeah, and it really could come down to the Amish vote in Pennsylvania. I'm going to just call it right now.
All right. All right, Brad, my friend. We'll see you tomorrow, okay?
All right.
Hey, by the way, before people go, Don Murphy's joining us tomorrow at 4:00. So once we get some more answers or questions answered by tomorrow, we'll have a great idea as to what we can actually ask and what's next. But that's tomorrow, 4:00 live stream. Everybody enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks for logging on. Keep your chin up, and we'll be back here tomorrow. Thanks.
Stay up, everyone.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. What'd you all think the latest live stream? We are only weeks away from the big presidential election. Who's going to win? What kind of impact is it going to have on the cannabis space? We're going to know in a few weeks. So, as usual, we'd love to get your feedback. Leave lots of comments below. Make sure to smash that like button. Share this video with your network. And as usual, as I always say, if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to our channel, because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.